if you could say your name and just a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this this theme and some history.
Why I'm here. So my name is Patricia Silva, and I'm an artist professionally, meaning like I have worked doing corporate stuff using things like Photoshop and InDesign and Premiere and all that stuff. And I also make my own artwork, like photos and videos. So that's who I am. And I moved, this is why I'm really happy that I'm actually talking to you about this. I moved to New York City in '94 to attend photo school. I went to SVA actually on this street, and the dorms that I stayed at were actually around the corner from the Limelight, which is how I came to know that it existed. I remember listening to like college radio in Massachusetts and then also in New York State, but being like, oh, there's a place called the Limelight, and there's all these places. I would hear these names, but I had no geographic like marker for them. So when I walked like by the Limelight and I saw the crowd, like, and I would see like, or at least what stood out to me was like gothic looking people, and I'm being very stereotypical right now. I was like, oh my God, that's the Limelight. Yeah, this makes sense. I live so close. So that is sort of like why I'm here, I guess, and why I'm interested in this. And like when I moved to New York at that time, it was like the first time that I was like not living at home. I was living in a dorm. I was in a city where I could like be out and not like worry about like, well, I still had to worry, but I didn't have to worry about family, let's just say. And so I was kind of living full throttle, and by that I mean I was like getting to class early, really excited to be learning about art, but then also going to see shows, like live music shows, DJing at the college radio station. It was just like, my social calendar was very packed. And that was me, so that's like why I'm here. And I think a lot of it was just so good to see live music. For me.
Did you go to the clubs for live music, or did you go for dancing, or for
both?
Okay.
Yeah, primarily both. Yes.
And what was the kind of music that you were interested in at the time?
So the first time that I went to Limelight, I went to see Pigface, which I don't know if you know who that is. I think Pigface. I know that Genesis Briar Purage was in Pigface. I think the other people were from Ministry. So like, I would say, well, Ministry to me is like mid-disco to early industrial. That's how I sort of classify it in my mind. Partly because of how their first like EP sounds, which is like, I wanted to tell her. You know, it sounds like that, which to me is like late disco, or mid-disco. And Genesis Briar Purage I really wanted to see because I grew up like listening to Throbbing Gristle on the radio and waiting for like 20 minutes to find out what was that thing I heard that made no sense. So that was my first concert at the Limelight. But then I would also go to others that don't exist anymore, like to see live music, like the Tramps. I mean, this is not really like a club, but I really liked seeing this southern music band called the Squirrel Nut Zippers, which were kind of like nouveau. Yeah, they were kind of popular. I saw them there, and then there was somebody in that group called Catherine Whalen who had a solo album that also toured there. And then also going to the Cooler on Ganser Voort, which was not too far from Mother's, which was the Clit Club on certain nights. So that was sort of like my route, or one of my routes.
Wetlands was over there too, right?
Yeah, I didn't go to I think Wetlands. You know who I saw at Wetlands? I saw Linton Kwesi Johnson at Wetlands, which was phenomenal. But I didn't go. I never went to like one place exclusively. I was just like, which is actually also a reflection of my music collection. It's like not any single thing. It's just a lot of different things.
Are there places you go now like, what's your relationship with clubs now in the city?
After I started working like a lot and full time, I stopped going. And I actually started working full time pretty early in my life. Like I was halfway through college and I actually switched to night school and I started working full time during the day to stretch out my scholarship. So that kind of put a dent in my nightlife. And then now, like, I don't go as much, but I wish that I knew how to find like continuations or evolutions of the music I love. And I think because I feel like I've been out of it for so long, it's been difficult to get back in, unless I know someone who's playing and I'm like, oh, I like your set, I'm gonna go. So I think probably the last like amazing like revelation music experience I had was on July 7, 2007, and I know that date because a Japanese group called the Boredoms, I don't know, they're like a noise band. I mean, I don't know why people call them noise. Well, I guess they're noisy, but they had this thing called a boa drum where they had people sit in this spirally kind of shape and they just did drums for a long time. And for me, I mean, I'm getting like feelings thinking about it because it was so amazing. So I will go to things like that, and that was outdoors, actually Brooklyn Park. Yeah, and I actually have I probably shouldn't advertise this, but I have like this recording of it on a mini disc player. I still have a mini disc player and it still works, but it's like Sony and Mac have never played well together, so it's hard to well, I'm sure it could happen, but yeah. And the thing is, I have no interest in reliving it. I have never played the recording back. I don't know.
What do you suppose it was about that experience that gives you that feeling now? Like when you think back on it, was it the audio? Was it the physical? Was it is there something spiritual? Was there some kind of heightened sense of self or others or community or anything like that?
Yeah, well, to me, everything you said has like is like what composes spirituality for me. But I think being outdoors, being with people, and feeling safe around like a mass of like I'm not somebody who feels safe in like a lot of people. I'm like, but in that arrangement, I just felt like everybody was so chill, and I liked that. But I think it gave me an opportunity to like, I don't know what better word to use. I'm going to say the word connect with nature in a way that I don't often do like in urban spaces. Because that's a lot of my childhood, is sort of like being in like the natural world and like following natural wonder and feeling very expansive. And then moving into like urbanity, which is complete compression. I like both of those experiences, but that Boredom's July 7, 2007 show, for me it was it made such a big impression because I was like, wow, I'm having this like long thread of an experience where I feel like, I hate to sound obnoxious, but I feel like I'm transcending time, but like I just really felt like I ceased to be a unit and I became part of a frequency. And maybe because I don't listen to drumming all that much exclusively and at that volume and at that scale and at that resonance, maybe I reacted that way because of that. But that's how it was. And I was like, I can't believe I'm not on LSD. I can remember this.
As a photographer at the time, you were studying. Did you ever bring your camera to these?
No.
Interesting.
No, you know why? Because I didn't have a camera for a long time. I was going to photo school and I was using the camera that the schools would give out, but like I was there on a scholarship and I didn't have my own equipment. And even if I did, I think I would have been more like, hey, can we meet later and make some photos, rather than bringing it, because I remember some clubs being very volatile and people getting very drunk and belligerent and just kind of tripping all over you, and, you know, so it was something where I always felt like I had to sort of be like, and this happened to me once actually, outside of the Limelight. Somebody was having a really bad drug experience, and three strangers were like, just got together and calmed that person down. And so I always felt like I had to sort of be very mindful, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Did it affect you as a visual artist, though, these sort of things that you were seeing and the kind of spaces or even the way people were presenting themselves or that sort of thing? Was there any, you know, and I suppose also that, to fold this into that question, the idea of moving to New York City?
Yeah. Did it affect me? I think I'm still learning how those experiences affect me in general. At the time, I think I was just happy to feel like I could, I mean, I would have never have used this language then, but happy to like feel feelings that I think are my own, as opposed to being against something. Like, so much of me growing up was like, I don't like that. Like, this is decidedly not cool, you know? And then I sort of like moved and I was like, oh, I can just experience things to find out like what does feel right, what does feel good. Like, that's a different mindset. So I was very, very appreciative of that. But I think I'm still learning as to how particular segments of culture inform me, because I'm always like, oh, I want to welcome all these wonderful things into my life. And I think for me, like, being welcoming of difference is really important, you know, and which is why I've always liked liking music as opposed to liking a specific style. But I don't necessarily want to get caught up in things that I then confuse with myself when they aren't organic to me. So, like, for example, like, I grew up listening to a lot of French hip-hop because I grew up in Portugal. But I can't pretend that I'm Algerian, you know, like, that's what I mean. Like, it's, I want to sort of like welcome all of these connection points, but I want to be influenced by like what I learned from it and how I can connect through culture. But to me, it's not a shortcut. Like, it's not something that I can then use to make assumptions, you know. And I'm not sure if I answered the question.
No, I think it's just your, as a visual artist, your inspiration and sort of like how you're activated, and I think that you're explaining it very well. Yeah, I mean, sort of.
I mean, as somebody who was always looking for fluidity in things, as opposed to like a fixed stance, being a bi person, I don't know. I actually was more, I was always looking for, as opposed to being like, that's it. Oh, that's it. Oh, that's it right there. I was always like, well, is it? Could it be? Like, might it be? Maybe. Like, but I do think there was a lot of richness in fluidity at that time. And I kind of wonder, like, what happened? You know, it's sort of like I went to school with, I don't know, it's just like, it's really strange to think back at that time and think that it was more progressive than we are living through now. Even those of us that don't expect progress to be linear, you know, like, cycles do come around, so, but all that to say, how it influenced me, I think that seeing people actively resist normativity in their own way definitely made a positive impact in my art and in my personhood. Can I point to it and be like, that was that? Well, maybe Lady Bunny for sure. But aside from that, like, it's hard for me to be like, ooh, that was that. Because I think when you look for ways of like how people carry themselves that are fleeting, it's hard to pinpoint them later, at least for me. The camera would have been helpful, but, you know.
What else about those spaces that you visited? Were there things that like, did you like to dance? Did you like to socialize?
Very much. Okay. Yeah, I very much liked feeling like I could dance anonymously and nobody would care. And nobody was there like pick me up or whatever. Like, I definitely enjoyed that aspect of it. Yeah.
Do you remember any of the bigger clubs around? Like, is it you would recognize in the neighborhood aside from Limelight? There were some others. I think Palladium was.
I miss Palladium. I don't think Palladium was open when I came.
Okay, yeah, it might have closed down by now.
I think so. I don't think it was open. I think the biggest place I ever went to was like Webster Hall.
Oh yeah.
To see what my friends called a fake rave show. Because at that time, like, I don't know, like having like family in Portugal and going there, spending my summers there, and like that music was very popular in a country. Well, at that time, like it had just converted to the euro. It was experiencing like a little bit of like, oh my gosh, like some people have like 2% of disposable income as opposed to 0, right? So there was that was like the beginning of like a small degree of like positive economy. What am I saying? Positive economy, like and having like money circulating in ways that it hadn't been circulated before. But so there was more of an atmosphere where the country was like, for the first time, like welcoming a lot of international music bands and acts. So in the early 90s, which I totally missed because I was here, when I went back into the in the mid-90s, like there was already this established culture of like, oh yeah, people go to raves at the beach and it's not a big deal, it's just what we do. So my idea of like a rave was like, it happens in public, it's not sanctioned, meaning people have to be careful and be ready to like leave at any minute, and wild things can happen. Like I went to one in this like medieval walled city that was like filled with foam, and that was like okay, and it wasn't that many people. I mean, maybe it was like several hundred people, but like I think compared to what happens in the US, that's not a lot. So when some friends who like had these similar experiences, not in Portugal, but like in the Midwest or out west, like in California, like Oakland, they were like, what, a rave in a club? Like, what the hell is the point? But I was like, well, let's go anyway. So I went to Webster Hall, and I remember a lot of like lights and the fog machine that I could not, I mean, I'm sure I have the ticket stub. Although I do have my ticket stub for Pigface at the Limelight, and I looked for it to bring it to this, and I couldn't find it. But I feel like it's a bookmark in something, and I'm going to come across it eventually, because that's not something I would throw away. Yeah, and I'm a ticket stub saver, so.
That's a really nice collection, I'm sure.
When I find them, it's actually not that big, but it's there. I think people have like collections like this, and mine is like that, you know. Yeah. But it's very fine things. So do I remember big clubs? I think Webster Hall is probably the biggest.
They have multiple dance floors, and yeah, it was huge.
Yeah. I can't think of any other one that I would have gone to.
It's all right.
I think Bowery Ballroom was later for me.
Yeah.
I think that opened later.
Yeah, and it's more of a music. Yes, it's just, well, I mean they're all music venues, but I don't think they ever had disco nights at Bowery Ballroom.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, SOB's is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some like Brazilian things, like dub Tropicali things that I went to there a couple times.
Nice.
Like Matt Professor used to DJ there a lot, which was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. All right, Patricia, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add to this, to your storytelling?
No, other than in terms of club, like, no, I think that's really it.